We got a lot of these now, and we have a lot of cords now, so thank you guys for the recommendations. Alan, you specifically. Dakar episode update. What I'd like to do right now is I want to study this for a second. Going to, some of you guys know I went to Art Center College of Design for transportation design. That was my goal when I was younger, was I wanted to be a car designer. I wanted to work somewhere corporate like Ford or BMW North America or something, and I wanted to go into a corporate facility and be with a team and wear a nice suit and design cars and sketch cars all day, and I dropped out. And it's the creative freedom that I wanted to be doing. And I've had several of you guys that actually are automotive designers be like, Morgan, you're living the dream right now. You're able to create stuff and envision stuff and build your visions out every day without it moving up a corporate ladder, and working on a project for a year and a half and having it get shut down and all the above. And for myself, design, building stuff is whatever. And I'm grateful to have the skill set to be able to fabricate things. But crafting is not where my heart is. It's just what I do. Designing is my absolute most nourishing thing in life. And with this car, Ryan has given me the keys to use design at the highest level. And when we talked about doing billet suspension or machine suspension parts for the front, we went through this process of designing these arms, and I sketch them. We took a scan and I started sketching, because at the rate that I like to do stuff, it's not building. Building stuff takes so long. I like to work at the pace of sketching something. Physcom sketch, put some value in there, put line weight in there, and then be done. Give me the next one. And that's also my creative flow. I can create endlessly. So when I'm building these things, dude, I'm thinking about something that's 5 steps, ahead of this part that I'm building, because it's just this drawn out bullshit that takes forever. So when I get chances like this to design parts, it's like the most special opportunity ever to me. And I designed all this suspension. We had Eric and Josh go and turn that into a digital model, but this is all from a hand sketch. These lowers and these uppers and the uprights, all of that came from sketching and designing and finding flow. And that's what I see being the talent or the skill here. Is all these cars, they end up being these expressions that we do. And at least to me, I see the Truggy, I see Vivian, I see the Range Rover, I see the Frontier, I see Carrie the Bronco, I see Kevin's truck, I see Selena, I see Duke, even the Black Bronco. All of them turn into these unique one-off expressions of functionality. And so it's nothing short. The Range Rover is probably the premium level of that for me. So I wanted to register this and give you a brief, because the trailing arms, we were going to replace the rear trailing arms, and we'll go over and look at one of the steel ones, because everything had steel parts before. But the trailing arms were this much more challenging concept, because they were an all-in-one. The lower has 3 points, 4 points, I guess, counting the shock pivots, and you kind of have a dimensional understanding there of what you need with the constraints. The trailing arm is this big, gnarly thing. And on top of that, for machine efficiency, we couldn't do the whole thing. It would be insane. It'd be like a 42 by 30 by 12 thing of chunk. So we needed to make it where it was interlocking. We needed to have a long arm into the pivot, the strength arm. We wanted to make sure that one was one piece because of all, the leverage. The thing with a trailing arm is they have a, not just the loads like this, but they have a side load. So if you lean the driver's side goes into something, it side loads this thing and it wants to pull the outer pivot. A lot of times with like sand cars and buggies, class 1 or pre-runner cars, they pull that outside pivot out of the chassis. So we wanted to make sure that whole leg was one, and then it had a compression support leg going in, and we wanted to upgrade the bushing into a 1.5 inch spherical bearing. So we had so much, and then they had to interlock in a way where they didn't look like that. It didn't just look like a chunk that's bolted to this, and this goes here, and it goes there, and it wanted to streamline things. So let's go look at them. See what we got going on here. That's the comparison. We do have some replacement lower arms here. So, if you like, whoa, my gosh. This is all, sometimes I think this looks like a female reproductive part. You know what I mean? I used to draw dicks when I was younger, and then somehow now I've upgraded to drawing organic parts. But this is the lower. Very simple on the bottom. We can look at one of these on the table, but essentially this is a 3-part design. This also upgrades our hubs to an outboard hub, which is going to give us a way better CV angle. So we're running, I think we're at 21 inches of travel in the rear. But what you're battling in the rear is the CV angles being unhappy. So when you go to an outboard, your input, where the CV shaft and the spline goes, and the pivot of that goes further out towards the outside of the car. So then essentially you're getting a longer run and you're getting less angle, which is just going to be helpful in every way to preserve the CV joints. So these are big, beautiful chunks. You can also see the size here. So that's an upgrade into a 1.5. And the thing is, when you're running a 1.5 inch bearing in aluminum, you have to have a lot of meat around these things. It can't be the same, as if you were going to build a steel arm that has a cup. You could get away with a lot less, but with aluminum, you're battling, mass, and you want more mass. So that itself is rendering a little bit of reconstructive surgery in the car, which we can look at. But I think right now, maybe we'll go look at one of these on the table over where Caleb's working, because Caleb is working on getting all the inserts ready, getting all the spacers, getting all the fitment, and preparing these to go onto the car. So all this stuff, I wish I could express the details, because going through this, what this is before we moved, and I would go home at night because I was working, I didn't have my computer at the shop, and I didn't have a desk or an office at the shop. So I would go home and, Josh and I would hop on a Zoom call, or he'd send me I'd send him some sketches, and then Josh would go through the sketches and he would show me, he'd do the best he can with the visual communication to get my sketches into a model to his understanding. And that's why the VisCom sketching is so important, because I have a really strong skill set with 3-dimensional drawing. And the reason is for stuff like this. If I tried to express this to Josh, I want this to be here and I want it to be here, and I'm doing handwork like a napkin sketch, I'm not going to get it, and it's going to waste everybody's time. It's going to waste the client's time, Josh's time, my time. So I do the very best I can to do a 3-dimensional concept sketch that communicates all of the surfaces. And all of these surfaces are things that we talk about. So what it looked like is, I would go home and I'd work whatever, 10-hour day or something, and I'd come home and I'd draw on the computer late into the night. and get sketches. So then the next day Josh could wake up and he could start working on revising the sketches and turning them into a model. And then he'd send me his stuff, and it was like that. It took months, you know, where I'd come home and then he'd have a revision, and I'd do this, put notes here, do that. And then, you know, he'd take that in and he'd revise it. And then finally we're like, yep, that's the one. So, you know, for myself, a skill set that I lack and I wish I had is not so much ones and zeros, SolidWorks engineering with geometric shapes, but it's surfacing. I want to know how to run alias. I want to know how to do sculpting, you know, because these parts, they end up being a sculpt rather than, you know, a bevel, some basic pocket, some triangles with a radius and where it goes down, and anybody can do that shit. And so I want to, if I had it my way, I would build everything where it was like this and it was organically shaped. What's up? You can come over. It's better than watching, because I'm like, oh, he needs something.
When you looked at me and did that stroke.
Yeah, World War II guy.
That was special.
Yeah.
That was special.
Make you feel special? Mm-hmm. Yeah. We should keep it. People are going to go to PR. They're going to call PR, and they don't want to deal with Taylor.
No, they do not. No, they don't.
So anyways, what Caleb's doing right now, you guys remember Caleb? I don't want to fumble this, so I'm just going to say that it goes here. But what we did is we set up where these things are interlocked. I want to caveman say seat in there. So these actually act as a structural guard where we're getting design cues, because if we always wanted a pocket in here and we wanted to have all these things on blades, right? So everything is this knife edge, but it's not even a 50-50 knife edge. It's like a 70%, 30%, you know, if you're starting here and you're going to the middle. So everything has weight and tension. You know, I play the rule of thirds a lot with stuff like this. It's the same thing with splitting all this. So really, that steel arm that you guys saw, all the data from that arm is put into this, and then we skew this thing into oblivion of functional style. So what Caleb's doing is he's dialing things in. There's a lot of nut certs and stuff that need to go in here. The way they've done this is they've set it up where they have these kind of guys.
Key locking insert.
There we go. And it's, to me, I think like a Healy coil. That kind of looks like a Healy coil.
Very comparable.
So what you're doing is you're getting grip on the aluminum via coarse thread, because a lot of times like a no-no is doing a fine thread tap into aluminum, because the aluminum's so soft, it can pull the threads out. So everything, you know, all these major components are getting these where they need to be tapped. And then that sets us up to run fine thread, which would then we can run like an aircraft certified 12-point or something. So there's there's stainless steel spacers that go into our primary hits, you know, sway bar. Don't think the limit strap gets one. Does it get one?
I don't recall.
I don't think it does.
It may get one, but I can't confirm.
But I know for sure the shocks, and I know for sure the sway bar. So everything is just dialed, but these things are indexed in here where they're locked in. I wish we could see the insides of these, you know. Can you take that off for us? I just want to show how it's keyed. Yeah, let's do it. We'll be back. So this is indexed, right? It's keywayed. So it's, instead of it just being a shear, it's all something that goes together. And then you have to think too, there's 1, 2, it's grabbing bolts. So, and even these were gonna be, Josh is like, how do you want to do these? I'm like, dude, make them like rifled into here. You know, these, like, that's a sick detail. This is still a cap screw that like you'd see, but it's zinc coated instead of that black oxide, because that's the fuck up. Same with 12 points. You get black oxide 12 points, dude, they rust. They leave like a little rust drizzle. So you can't do that. So this comes in from here, and then there's another one that captures from the other side. You know, and then once you get the leg on, this guy, so you have this, these two lock in, and then there's indexing in here. So that's holding things and it's setting them. There's keyway in here, so that's hitting it. And all that stuff we thought about and engineered. So even though it looks like this, there's a ton of thought, and I owe it to Josh Frey too. Josh, thank you so much for helping me with these, you know, and Ryan. We owe everything to Ryan, because Ryan's a bad motherfucker with letting us build this stuff, and he's also got ideas. A lot of times with the clients, they know what they want. They know what we are capable of designing and producing, but their input sometimes isn't as valuable, because it's more like, dude, Morgan, do your thing and go, and I know it's gonna be badass, and just do it. But with Ryan, he's got these ideas where it's like we have like a negative marriage together. He's like, I think we should do that. I'm like, yep, we should do that. And I'm like, what do you think about we should do that? Well, yeah, no, but if we do it like this and we do it like this, and we literally end up doing this thing where we're climbing this ladder together, and then we get to this point and we're like, hell yeah, sick. Okay, all right, talk to you later. Sounds good, bye. And that's been the conversations. And so this whole car has been like this, you know. It's not me just pushing this thing into where it's at. It's Ryan like wanting this thing, you know, like last time he came, and we'll go over there, but last time he came, same thing. He's like, what do you think about, you know, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna wrap up the inside. You know, I'll get the upper console done, which we'll look at, and then, you know, I think we're good. And he's like, well, what do you think about like shelves? Should we do like some storage racks? And I think we should have like storage behind the seats, and we should have a shelf up here and this and that. And I'm like, okay, we can do it floating, this and that. We can have a transparent window through that one and through that one. So when there's not stuff there, it's like visually not closed out and all this stuff. And, you know, carving out the doors in the rear and having jacks mounted into the doors and impacts sunk into the doors. And like, it just, his ideas complement my vision as well. And then, you know, sometimes he'll pitch stuff where he has the idea, but he doesn't see the vision. And then I feel like I've done some things where he's like, hell yeah, that's exactly, I didn't know exactly what it should look like, but that's it. Like you did it. And so it's awesome. And he's been great with that. So, you know, thank you, Ryan. But let's go look at more stuff. Caleb, keep doing your thing. We're gonna I think the last time we did the Dakar update, talking about what things are in process and what is going on. It's not just physical work that needs to be done here, but there's a lot of outside resources that are being used to get stuff done. So I'll touch on what's currently being built, you know, in-house by us, and then the next stuff is like what we need to have processed. Right now, all of the rear central area is disassembled, so the coolers are out of here. You know, all the panel work's off, obviously, and then this pivot that, you know, if you remember on the trailing arm, the new trailing arm has this large 1.5 inch spherical bearing that's living on the inside pivot. So what we did is we've cleared that out. We've retained the hole that goes through the bulkhead, the plate structure here, but this, the perpendicular bulkhead, we've gouged in and prepped. And what we're gonna do is, once we have those arms assembled, because in theory, those arms, the machined arms, should be the same as the steel arms. But I just never trust that, and I don't know. So I wanna make sure that we fit the new tab, the inner tab, to the trailing arm, and just verify it. And then really, these are in line, they're on the same plane, so you could run a piece of like all thread from this pivot section all the way through there, build out your tabs, get the spacing right, have a machine spacer, you know, tack everything, and then put a 12 point in there with the proper grip diameter all the way through, and then start welding that out. While we're in here, the one mechanical variable that is, like, I haven't been working on is we have the shifter mounted because it's a 5-speed. But we need to have the shifter linkage dialed in, and we need to make sure the whole mechanism is working with the car because it's a cable linkage. And if you have an understanding of how that works, which is a new understanding for me, these things, they have two motions. They pull the shift shaft, or whatever you want to call that thing in the gearbox, in and out, and they also rotate it. You know, so they pull it out, and then it, you know, adjust it, and it goes to the next gear, and they push it in, and it engages the gear. So it's all in one steadfast motion, but there's brackets that have to be built specifically in the right area to do that with the shaft. So we're dialing that in while we're under here. What did we do while we're under here? We also need to upgrade the intercooler. The intercooler that came on this is an underground racing intercooler. It's a little cheese stick device. Hold on here. I mean, we definitely made a sick frame for it. This small chromoly tube structure bolts in, but it's just, and you know, it gets padding under here, so it's not like aluminum on steel. But that's not sufficient for what we're doing now. We need to have a massive water to air intercooler. So Matt Taylor came in here, he scanned every area because there's a void up here, right? There's a cooler that lives here that's laterally mounted. There's a void in there that's specific to the intercooler. So what we're gonna do is we're working with PWR. They are going to engineer a intercooler that is maximized in there, all the bells and whistles, custom mounting system, billet mounts, billet intakes, and it'll go in there and it'll be set up for Wiggins and Vangeon style clamps where we just connect the dots to it from the turbo to the throttle bodies. So we're trying to get all the guts detailed out. We'll go back and look at these quarter windows and you know, stuff to expect for next time. Trailing arms in, hubs on, new calipers on. The hubs got upgraded, so did the calipers. So the calipers are a 6-piston JMAR, just like the front, trophy truck spec, 14-inch Coleman rotor. But you know, we'll have the pivots done. I'm anticipating we have the shift linkage done. I would love to know that this thing can shift. I'd love to know that the stick shift that's in the, you know, where the drive knob used to be for the Range Rover, you know, I want to see all that thing just be engaged and work. To go on a little tangent, I do still want to, like same with Ryan, we want to get some kind of a mechanism. I don't know if it's a ball bearing click style thing, but something that makes it feel like a gated, like Murcielago shifter or an old Ferrari shifter. You know, gated, there's a very precise mechanical click that they do. And we want to have a gated pattern like that on the top, but you can't just put the gated pattern in there. You actually need to have that mechanism, that clicking. So we're going to get down to the bottom of that, but I think that's going to be something that's inside the car. We'll keep looking back here. Ooh, look at this. That's pretty slick. So my workstation's pretty rough. Isn't it crazy? Even like I'm starting design on the wheelies. Look at what it started out as. I love that. That's my favorite thing is taking OEM looking stuff and making an expression of it. That's my jam. So see this is the scoop. So this is your rear window on the passenger side. There's a big scoop that goes in here. If you look at this is the top view and kind of a top rear 3/4 view. You can see there's an inlet. The arrows indicate inlet. This indicates the exit, so it's still a pass-through. I don't like to do scoops where there's no option for it to relieve itself, because then if the air is going in there at a point where the intake or the cooler or whatever can't facilitate the amount it's getting, it's almost a turbulence thing, because then it creates a pocket where there is no flow. Does that make sense? So it's like if you opened up a pocket and you blew into there and it was so much, it would almost just blow back in your face because it has nowhere to go. So same with this, there's an exit, and then you can see the blister. That blister is for the wastegate. I'll draw on this, I don't even care. The other thing is this profile line. See how it now consistently goes all the way right to the part line on the hatch? That wasn't there. So keep that stuff in mind. This is your profile, right? This is called your belt line. And this is just your upper window line. You know, if you're super hardcore transportation design, you call it a DLO, which is a daylight opening. But you know, this guy, it runs nice, and then it has this detail where it captures back down. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just run this right back here. That's kind of low, but you get the point. It's gonna be streamlined. And what I did is I laid this out with tape and the scan, so the data is perfect, and it actually lets you rip this like this compound curve all the way to the point where it hits the body line here. The next portion of this is there was a large opening pretty much through here think right around here, where this was like a support structure. A lot of the interior support, especially on aluminum body cars, is for rollover protection because they don't have a roll cage. So we can safely cut a lot of this out because we have a lot more of this stuff in there than a factory car has. What this does, this is going to be our filtration system or our air intake for the turbos. In order to maximize this, I removed this section. So then we're scanning this. Canon Filters is partnered with us. They're partnered with myself as a brand ambassador, which is a huge thing for 2026. They're also taking care of the Range Rover in a way where they're going to prototype the air filter system. Meaning they, Matt Taylor came, he scanned all this stuff, and then they're going to take this data and they are going to build us a factory looking piece that mounts into here somehow, and it has a filter element that's custom shaped, and then it has like however, like when you put an intake on your truck and it has like the formed ABS or plastic tube. It's not just one circular tube, but it's kind of like squishes down and it goes around things how it needs to, and it's custom to your vehicle. That's what this is going to have. So this will have a K&N air filter kit essentially that is running into each turbo. So twin turbos, twin 76s. So this guy will converge and it's going to use all the real estate we possibly can, and then it's going to dive into here and it's going to all go into the turbo intake down here. The scoop is, it's a very proud scoop, so it's probably 6 to 7 inches off of the surface of like the door or the window line. So what you'll be able to do is you're either going to be able to go in here and service it from the entrance, but I think there's going to be mesh here that's going to replicate the grill, so this will have to come off, and then you're going to service this just like a flat, not a cone filter, but like a flat filter element that you'd have. A lot of cars have a flat filter element. But just, I want it to be like OEM style. So each side, you'll undo some clips or something. You'll take the scoop off. You'll undo the clips to take the filter out, filter, service, put it back in. This brings us to our next thing. Once we have the rear cross member on here, that was on me. There was a delay there for helping Josh design this thing. I also needed to send him a part. So last episode we talked about the rear cross member or just a rear engine support. These are temporary, the T-bar fasteners here. They're holding this engine up in the back, but that's not permanent. It's going to have a machine component here that goes in, it captures from this corner, it goes down, same deal, comes out here, and I think it's an X or it's at least a V. It lets us still change the belt where we don't have to like remove it or do something stupid like that. It also locates the power steering pump. The oil pump on here, we've found it should provide what we need to for the dry sump. If it doesn't like scavenge right or something, then we're gonna take a second look at that. But right now we're being told that the oil pump will work. So all we really need to do for amenities on this thing is just get the power steering pump in here. So that'll run this, and then once we get to that point, we can plumb it. We're not gonna be waiting on anything else. This is the Boost Logic billet intake. This is a DI delete on this thing. There's new throttle bodies. They're set up for a Vangeon clamp or a Wiggins clamp on the front. See these guys? So this is, I designed, the issue with, I think we talked about it before, is if you have a Lamborghini, say you have like a Huracan or something, which is like standard V10 Lamborghini, you already come up to that car, you see it from afar, you see it from close up, you know it's a Lamborghini. The problem is, when you come up to this, it's definitely something cool and interesting. Part of the awesomeness of this car is when you open this, you have a Lamborghini like valve cover, because even when you look at the engine packaging here, it's still, if you don't it's something gnarly. But if it doesn't have Lamborghini valve covers on here, for a lot of people, it's hard to register that there's a Lamborghini engine back here. So the opportunity I had with Heath and Boost Logic is I mentioned that to them. So what they did is, this is temporary, and then they actually have, so the team at Boost Logic took my drawing, and then they got us our valve covers. So what this does is this lets us still run a performance upgrade for a known issue, which is a failing intake manifold from a Lamborghini, like those plastic things, they break and they chip and they fail, and they can't handle what built motors like this do. So this is the upgrade, and now we just get to put those covers back on, so we're still checking a box of having this thing being a visual cue back here. I have concerns over the body. I started getting the body quoted like a year ago, and it was, the prices have ranged anywhere from $60K to $250K to do the body panels. That doesn't mean we're replacing the whole body, but it means we're putting, like, the shitty way to put it is we're putting a wide body kit on it, right? So the doors, the quarter panels, the rear valence, scoop treatment, portions of the front door, the lower rocker, front fenders, front valence, hood, and treatment in here where the AC condenser ducting is. The way that I've, like, just over understanding how this stuff works, because a lot of this is still foreign to me, the way that this works is model file. You know, you do it a couple ways. You either shape this whole thing and you draw out the shapes. You know, you do one side, you shape it, you like it, you have it scanned, then they digitize it, they mirror it, and then you get a model file. Or you have a rendering done, they render the whole thing out, they model it, and then they can produce it. And then the production level goes to, you know, 5-axis mill, CNC mill, and they make, you know, a mold. And then that's what you're pulling your carbon fenders off, and you can reproduce heavily off those things. The other way that is more foreign to me is 3D printing something, and then, you know, tightening up the 3D print when you put it on the car, and then, you know, using those as a plug for a mold. That's what we're doing, and it wasn't necessarily my choice. I'm just kind of going with the flow. Some of the stuff that, you know, the client has a choice on. I think what we talked about doing originally was going to be clay sculpting, and as excited as I'd be to clay sculpt this whole thing, I don't have enough ego where it has to happen if it doesn't make sense. And I think timeline-wise, this is a large project for me to learn how to clay sculpt on. When I was in Art Center, I clay sculpted a 5th scale model or a speed form, and that's a lot less involved because it's a lot tighter of surfaces and they're more complex, and it's almost easier to do complex, tighter stuff than it is to do big, beautiful runs of shapes. So I understand that. I've worked diligently on designing the body, sketching it, and working with the team to get the body going. But the way that the prototype body is going to go on here is going to be a bunch of different, it's like small format 3D printing mosaic. It looks like a quilt, right? It's good we have references. See, we don't have to put them in from the edit. We can just put them on from my phone. So that's our driver's side rear door. And I'm not throwing any shade here, but I have concerns when I start looking at, like, the surfaces. You know, I just, stuff makes me concerned, because I guess what we're doing is this whole thing gets printed out, it gets glued together, we put it on the car, we fit it all on the car, and then it goes through an extreme amount of body work to get those prints dialed in, the 3D printed pieces dialed in, like it lives on the car. And then we bring the car to them, and then they body work the crap out of it, and then they pull molds off the bodywork pieces. To me, that leaves a lot of room for error on stuff. It leaves a lot of room for it being a perfectly symmetrical side-to-side car. And I don't know enough about it. That's why I'm just expressing my concerns, because I don't understand that. And to me, I'm like, well, it makes more sense if we just do a large format and it's not as tight of a detail, but we're able to just clean that up because the lines are all kind of consistent and big. Or we just mill out some foam and, you know, do it that way. So trusting the process here, and what I'm gonna do is just, there's definitely stuff that I can be focused on to get as much done as possible on my end without having to worry about that. So that's on the back burner. That's going on as we speak. The printing has been non-stop. I think they have everything. I think they have door, quarter, and rear valence all done, and they're getting that ready for us to grab. And then I'm gonna be building that into the car. The front will go after. But what we can do is we can go in and talk about the inside of the car here. Look at this thing. Just, that whole vibe is pretty good. It's getting OEM feeling. So I can, so when you sit in here, besides this, there's quite a bit of room. What this is a false floor, and it's raised to the same level as the other side. If you guys remember the other side, and I'm sure we'll shoot some of it right now, there's a automated or a actuated pedal box over there. The pedal, all the pedal controls, so clutch, brake, brake master, throttle, they're all coming up from the ground here. They're not hanging down, and they slide. There's 4 inches of adjustable throw in there. So, you know, the seat is on a 4-inch actuator, so everything is automated over there. This one's just on a manual. This is a 720S McLaren seat, which is fucking amazing. But these are just on a manual slide, which is funny for a McLaren. Like, oh yeah, just grab this thing. Okay, all right, cool, yeah, sick car. But what's under here is the electronics. So, you know, talking with Power Tune from Australia, they came over, they flew out here, went through with me where things need to be, and we have to have like pretty much a service tray of all the PDMs and everything. So, you know, some were decently accessible, some were also sealed from the elements, some were away from the heat. So it made sense, you know, when this car starts to get filled out, you got to start using some thought on where you're going to put stuff, because as you know, it always starts empty, and you start filling these things, and it's like only one thing only fits one place. So you can see that's the floor under there. It's fully sealed. This thing will probably have to have upholstery wrapping around it, and that's why I gapped it. I left about a 3/16 of an inch, you know, all the way around the thing, so when there's upholstery on it, it can go, you know, upholstery on the false floor plus the lid. And then what we'll have is like a mat, some kind of a matching mat. The mat, when you look at the other side, there's, you know, the floating 3/16 piece of aluminum sheet. That shape, the kind of organic shape that thing has, is what we're going to replicate over here for the mat. So this will kind of be hiding, and you don't need to, it's not like a common service thing. It's just if you're going to dyno it or you need to tune something, you open that up. There's a tray that's going to live in there, and it's going to have rubber isolators, and then that tray will be your electronics tray. It'll come out relatively easy, but you just lift this thing up, you plug in, you're good to go. The other thing is there's like shape towards the footwell there where you can see it's prominent, it comes out. And that, you know, if you didn't have that aluminum in the front, it would go like tighten into a corner. So that's for all the wire looms to come down and waterfall into the electronics bay. The whole thing too, there's a lot of tin work under here that just closes this whole thing out. So there's no, when you guys see under here, there's no guts, there's no under the dash. Everything is completely contained like a factory car, and that's what we wanted to go for, is just, you want it to be seamless. So when we upholster all this stuff, it'll all just blend in and there won't be any guts where you see anything. You'll see some of this, but that'll be carpet. Some of the cage you'll see, and we'll get into that right now. A couple things here. So we do have the steering wheel insert in here. Kind of moves. Everything is gapped accordingly for upholstery. There's 3/16 of an inch, so that gives an 1/8 inch of foam, and then it gives the material thickness. So when this thing gets wrapped and stitched, it'll be firm in there. But we just wanted to do a test fit, and you know, you can see this thing already looks factory. The gray that you see here and the gray on the top, that'll be a billet accent. The billet accent will be a raw finish aluminum, just like this. So it's tied in to match. It didn't need to be there, but what it does is it breaks up this thing that we're gonna add here, and it ties it into being the same language as the rest of the car, and then we put a Motec screen in there. The current stuff for myself is working on this upper console area and a lot of the headliner. What you can see is see this, can you see over here? Okay. Well, it doesn't matter if it's on your side or my side,
I got it.
but this radius, what we're building to here is the moonroof. So there's a blackout section, just like, you know, your factory windshield. You see how there's black here? Right, there's parts of the glass, like the moonroof up here, that have that black perimeter. So I've built all this right to the black perimeter, and this is gonna be a visual thing. So you're gonna have a glass roof in this. You'll have upholstery going right up to a glass roof. So it'll be like Alcantara, and then a glass roof just living here with a powder coated chassis coming through. All this stuff has to come off. The visors, these are just burner visors, but you can see the shape is all to reflect the visors. So there'll be 3D printed catches on here, just little basic guys, so these things can stay, but you can see what's going on here. You know, this whole thing is tailored to feel factory. There's a ton of different shape in here, and then the current thing is this, right? So this whole tray, one of the things I really like about it is the exposed tubes, right? I have a thing for running chassis through sheet metal and showing it. So you can see like this main central tube, you know, runs under here, and then it's exposed here, and the shape of this draws. So just think about what that's gonna do for finish work. That's gonna turn into a nice powder coated item, and then it's gonna be upholstered, padded, like badass stitched work going through here where it goes right up to the tube, you know, and then you have all your factory controls. I think that's like a little sunglass case. There's all of your, the extra buttons. The stuff in the moonroof will be dual usage because the Motec is gonna be tricking all this stuff. So literally like the call button, that could be something for your phone, anything. And then there's 2 standard dome lights up here, and then there's speakers. So, you know, this is just getting finished out. The other thing I wanted to do is there's this black, there's the dot matrix here. That's what that's called. And then there's this blackout, and there's this ugly thing for your rear view mirror. If, you know, with off-road cars, I consider the front windscreen or the windshield a consumable, meaning that these things get fucking cracked and they get rocks thrown at them, and they are an item that needs to be replaced, you know, at least once a season. It could be something as simple as you go to Glamis and you're by the wash, or you're on Sand Highway and a dirt bike goes in front of you and gasses it with a paddle, and one pebble hits it and cracks it, you're done. So to go through the work of taking off this bracket, which is glued on there sick, and getting rid of all of, you know, the blackout here, it doesn't make sense. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build out shape. You know, see how this is all captured? So this will keep going, and it'll build shape around this in a tasteful way, all the way down to the front here. It's not really affecting your view, and it's going right here, and it's literally hiding all that blackout. So then every time you just replace your glass, it just is clear. It doesn't, you don't even worry about getting rid of the bracket or anything. This thing's all buried in here, you know, same thing. It's a lot of that exposed tube. Like this is the same deal. This will be powder coated, and you'll have upholstery going right into here. So it adds this like hybrid thing of nice upholstery versus, you know, your chassis work showing through here. And I think that's right on the verge of like functional luxury, because the one thing I really don't like is when people have like a pre-runner and they do the headliner and it's just flat tubes. And, you know, like all this work for this vehicle, this machine that you have, and you know, you want to have that sense of craft and functionality even with a headliner. And the same with safety, right? It's like a lot of people get in there, and when they see like a headliner where it's got these indentations in it, you know, they're like, oh shit, we are in a safe, caged, capable vehicle. So when we're driving this thing like we are, or like this person is, I feel comfort and security. The flat headliner, it just ruins everything. You don't, okay, cool, and you just made the roof 3 inches lower. So having this as a hybrid where it goes through here and it's also in like this plush upholstery, I think it's going to be the win here. And you know, the back kind of shares the same deal. You know, everything goes and exposes itself, and then we'll upholster everything else. While we're back here, scope of work for me is finish this out. The top, you can see here, the top needs to be closed out somehow. But part of this is you need to be able to get this thing off. So you can't close it in all the way, or you have to have a bolt-on part on each side here, which is probably what we're gonna do, because you got to be able to get the thing off, right? There's 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece, and they all need to be able to come off relatively easy. You don't want to have them just buried. So I'll close these areas out up here. And then what Ryan's talked about is shelving under here. So we want to have something that draws out on the bottom here. Can you see? Yep. Like a small shelf that draws out on the bottom that's maybe 40%, comes out 40% here. And then, you know, there'll be a shelf right here. So, you know, if, you know, Ryan's girlfriend or something gets in here, she can put her stuff here. And it's just like this shelf. It follows the harness bar tubes and it comes out and it goes back in, and it's got depth into it. So there's a tray where you can put stuff. You know, Ryan's gonna daily this thing a lot, but it might be something where you could have a strap system in here that's like a nice Velcro strap or something. It's upholstered where if you need to tie something down, you use hook and loop. You know, military's been using the hook and loop stuff forever. It's strong. I know you say Velcro and you're like, what? That's gonna hold? Yeah, it's gonna hold. Holds a lot, you know what I'm saying? So we should be able to get all that dialed in, and that's gonna get us out of working on the inside of this thing. And we're gonna be able to close it out, this thing. So Ryan's seat is a little bit taller because he wanted to be sitting high up to see out of this thing because it's got a long overhang in the front. God, that feels good though. If we're like, sometimes I think about this thing and I'm like, I don't even know what the driving experience is going to be because it's such an insanely nasty combination of stuff. If like 2,000 horsepower. Yes, please. So this is, you know, we need to figure out, this is hard mounted in here, but we need to just connect the dots with the cables. And so once we know where the throw is, that's where we'll come in and we'll scan this whole thing, and we'll scan it in every position. Because Joey had the solution for this, which now when you think about it, you're like, duh. But it's just a spring and a ball bearing. So like a chambered, right? It's a spring and a ball bearing. So literally every like chamber you go to, so first, second, you know, third, fourth, fifth, reverse, has a little channel way. And on the entrance to the channel way, you know, or maybe right before you actually fully engage it, you have a ball bearing that's loaded with a spring and it's pushing it out there. So then when you click it, you hear that snap where it snaps through it. And that's the solution. It's not even going to be a hard thing to mechanically engineer that. I don't see a huge thing, but we'll have a billet chunk that goes in here, or maybe it covers this whole span. It'll probably have something special like the Dakar logo, you know, especially constructed for Ryan Jennings by MCD1. You know, and I don't know what else it has. I think the start stop's up here, so that's solid. But we'll just put a feature in there. It's got a cup holder here. It's got 12 volt. It's got a SIM card probably for the infotainment. It's got HDMI. It's got charge ports. Another 12 volt. So that'll close that out. But we're definitely getting closer here. The wiring, I haven't heard from PowerTune, but I know that they received it. We had some issues with customs. First off, we had issues with DHL. Like, when's the last time you heard about DHL? I guess I'm not much of an international person, but I always thought DHL was like shady. You know, see like DHL vans, you're like, DHL, bro, who uses DHL? But for international and for what Ryan and PowerTune wanted to go to Australia, they preferred that. And we had to go through some serious just questions after questions after, well, no, now we need this form, well, now we need this information, well, now we need this, and it was kind of a headache. I think we're in the system now where we don't have to worry about that stuff, but dude, it was pretty cool. So PowerTune has all that. They're going to send us our electronics. Those also got stopped in customs. So, you know, at some point we should have an update on how the wiring's going. But right now, it's about getting the sheet metal done in here. It's about getting those trailing arms on the back. We'll probably have the Lamborghini intake covers on there. And, you know, if we're in a good spot, then we have that crossmember done and we're starting to plumb this thing. We can also plumb other stuff right now. Like we can do all the hard lines for the front radiator. We can get all that stuff going to the back. But, you know, that's going to be the next step is, you know, Luke is probably going to be doing all the plumbing on this thing. And then you know, Ryan and I are set on making this. When we went to SEMA, we saw a lot of like the Battle of the Builder stuff and a lot of the finish work on the cars. It bumped us into another thing of like intention with the finish work on this and getting the tin work dialed. So like the front, we'll go look at the front, but same. Let's talk about it while we're out of the car, actually. You guys see that? That's the fuel fill. So that'll be an outside detail where you don't have to like open the hood or something to put gas in the car. And it all kind of drain right there. We'll probably have a little bit of a drain tube in case worst case scenario you spill something over. But you can see it's in the drawings. This is also the hood we designed. And then we're also gonna print some of the same grill indicator into the inserts in the hood. And then it's like a blade. You know, so that can be a different color or a different finish. And maybe that's a matching finish. This is all carbon. That could be something else. So that's gonna live there. When we get the fenders and the hood, we're trying to go for a hinge deal. So we're not doing like fucking bullshit pins and arrow catch things and all that. We want to just have hinges and something traditional. You know, I don't know where you hide the mechanism, but we're avoiding like the fender washer look. We're avoiding the hood pin look, the arrow catch latch system, which are terrible for off-road. The moment they get sand or dirt in them, they suck. So OEM style. With that, the fuel fill is going to live over there. But what I was getting at is when you open this, it's still going to have like panel work, like beautiful finished panel work in here where it's going to capture everything, and there'll be like shape going into it, you know, to finish the car off. It's like skinning something, it's like dressing something. Same with the rear. Ryan's expectations, and that's kind of why we got to make a call on like what information do we need back here before we do this. But you know, expectations for Ryan too is I'm going to tin all this out, tin everything right over to the intake, have like bevels where it's not just like a cut in the tin work, but it's like beveled down in. A bevel is like this. This is a bevel. You know, so it's a shape change that's, well, you know, some people call that a chamfer or something, but just bevel. So like, you know, we'll get tin going into here and it'll have like bevel, so it adds three-dimensional. Same thing in here. Instead of having like this covered in a mesh thing, we'll have this go out and then we'll have it bevel like and notch into this. So you're gonna see this wants to play a role in the visual aspect. It doesn't just wanna be something that's buried under there, because there's so many layers of work that have been thought out through here and there's been care put into here. We want to be able to exploit the layers without having them completely exposed and without burying them. So the way to do that is to do a hybrid system where the panel work is in here, but it's showcasing features while it's still doing what it's supposed to by containing. And this could be something where some of this is paneled and it bevels down into here and it has like beautiful, like, you know, shape changes, and then there's like mesh on some areas, you know, so it's a dual thing, like a mesh portion, a bevel, so you see some of this, You know, same thing here. This could be mesh right here, and then it's beveled into here, and it's super exciting. The part that's gonna get a little bit consuming, and what we'll probably end up doing is pull the engine, because I'm thinking, how do I get, like you could say there, if I need to panel this portion in, like working over the engine is gonna be insane. So I think what we'll probably do is just get the powertrain out of here, remove this rear cross member, and then I can pop up and I can work right there. I might even do that first before we get to this, so I can do all the hard part. I like to just do the hardest shit first. So probably go in there and tin work all that and just do it, you know, trim it up. You know, we have AC dryer up there. We have AC lines that are gonna come from the condenser. We need to kind of formally know where that stuff is. We wanna try to do as much hardline as possible. Also though, hardline, do it where it matters. Not just for looks, but for functionality. Make transitions that go to the engine and stuff if we need to convert to soft line, just to give it a little bit of wiggle room, or, you know, the heat expansion, contraction, do things like that. So I think that's it right now for the update. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Probably a little longer. Another thing, just like I've said, is, you know, Fab Diaries. I'm gonna be building this thing with you guys. So once we are touching into this stuff, you guys are building it with me, just right by my side. So stoked on the Dakar. I'm stoked on everything, but this is a huge opportunity. And like I said, Ryan, thank you so much.